It looks right.
Is it live? No. So welcome, everyone. We are now live and we do have quorums. So we have in the room, we have Aaron Ferguson from North Frontenac, Councillor Bill Saunders and Neil Allen from South Frontenac. And then on Zoom, we have Councillor Nikki Gowdy, and we also have Janet McDonald from the Township of Frontenac Islands. So unfortunately, as I mentioned in my email at our last meeting, we did not have quorums, so we will have to do the election of officers once again. But before we start, I did want to introduce to everyone Erin Ferguson, and she is the new representative for the Township of North Frontenac. So the first item of business, as I mentioned, is the election of officers. So I just need a nomination for the chair. Okay. And is there a seconder for that? Janet or Nikki?
Yes, I will. It's Janet.
Okay, and then are there any other? Sorry about that. Are there any other nominations? So seeing none, I just need a motion to close nominations.
I propose that motion.
Councillor Saunders, and is there a seconder for that?
I'll second. Thank you.
And all in favor? Perfect, that's carried. And Mr. Allen, you do accept that nomination?
Yep.
Perfect. And then I just need a nomination for vice chair. Are there any nominations for the vice chair? Janet, you had your hand up?
Yes, I would like to nominate Kurt for the position of vice chair.
Okay, and is there a seconder for that?
I can second that.
Councillor Saunders? And are there any other nominations? So seeing none, can I just get a motion to close nominations?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
And is there a seconder for that? Councillor
I'll second that.
Saunders? So Kurt is not at the meeting today, so I will confirm with him if he accepts that nomination. So at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much. All right, well, I'll just start with the agenda. The adoption of the agenda from for today's meeting, August 1st. Can I get a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
All right. Do I need a second for that? All right. And can I get a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right. All right. And all in favor? All right. Number 0.4, we don't have any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Oh, we have that. Sorry. Do we have any pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? No. All right. Number 5, the adoption of the minutes from December 6th. I think there was everything was fine with those. Do we have a motion to adopt those minutes? Is anyone?
Yes, I will make that motion.
Janet, and I get a second as
I'll
well.
second that motion.
All right, Nikki. All right, and all in favor? I do not believe there's any deputations or presentations at this time. So we'll just move on to 0.7, which is reports to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Janet, you were going to speak to that, were you?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So this is just a little bit of an update report on what has been happening at the county over the last quarter. The first piece there is the KMP Trail, which the committee is quite familiar with. We just did some completions of what the committee was aware of in terms of benches and amenities along the trail. As well, moving forward this year are some infrastructure improvements. So those will be done to some bridges that that are requiring some repair. So those bridges will be replaced. The other thing as well, in terms of the trail, it really hasn't progressed much further. The next portion of the trail, and Richard is certainly here to comment on this, but the next portion of the trail between Central and North Frontenac has not started yet. We are still in the property acquisition stage. Is that correct, Richard? So there's been no further development on the trail. So mainly it's just been accessibility upgrades or completing projects that were underway back in 2022. In terms of the conversion of accessible documents, again, as everyone knows, we are not able to put in accessible content on our website now. So we do continue to ensure that our documents are in an accessible format. We've had some extensive staff training on how to create accessible PDFs. So we do continue to work away on that. And then the next piece is, or the last piece, I should say, is just the redevelopment of the administration building. So again, this project started back in 2022 when we vacated the building. So level 0, which is what we call the basement, is probably 80% complete. The construction, the drywall, the painting is all finished. It's just some last minute touches in terms of finishing on doors and millwork. In terms of the main building, it's about 50% there. The actual construction and drywall has occurred, but there's still major like floor work that needs to be done, the doors, the trims, all of that. So there's actually a video that I did want to show the committee, and I'm just going to ask if we can pop that video up that I sent you. So this is just a video of our communications officer of what he took of the building, and I don't think we have it up on. So I'm just going to maybe give a little bit of an overview of what you're seeing here. That will be the walkout area from the basement. And then this is back into the main foyer. This was the old living room, which is now going to be what we're calling the collaboration space. This is a hallway that just leads down to the occupational health nurse office. And you can see here how most of the construction is actually done with the drywall up, but there's a lot of finishing to yet be done. And this here is where the new stairwell will go. It's a very shrunken stairwell from what was there before. And then you're seeing into what will be the executive assistant's office. And then this space in here will be the new reception area. Yep. Yeah, so the old stairwell has been completely removed, and these are the HR offices. And then this is the executive assistant's office, and then this will be the stairwell there's a stairwell that goes to the second floor.
And that's the whole downstairs, isn't it, that I got too much?
And then going up to the second floor, the planning and economic development department will be there, as well as the finance department.
Yeah, I've worked there 4 years. I've never, ever been down there. Morning. Hey, how are you? Good. You? Just fine, thanks. I'll just be a sec.
So these are just storage areas. And again, it's a little bit difficult to get a grasp of what you're seeing. This is going to be closed in by glass. It will be an office or a small meeting office. And then through here, you're going to be seeing that will be eventually another office, 2 offices in there. One will be the treasurer and the other one will be our manager of continuous improvement. But again, still lots of work to be done here. And then this is the planning and economic development office. So there will be 3 offices in here, and the rest will be flex space. So it's quite an open space, this one. And you'll just have open desk space with separation barriers. And this will be the office of the director. And then that takes you through a corridor that takes you to the elevator. So all 3 floors are accessible through the elevator. And that is just storage space. That will be a storage area. And that's just where the staircase will go. So this video, I believe, is about 4 weeks old. It was taken just a week before the last council meeting, which was July the 19th. So again, this is down on the main floor. So again, this will be the office for the executive assistant to the CAO, and then it will have also access to this area, which is the front reception area. And then what you're going to see right now will be the main entrance to the building. It's quite a large space. There was an addition put on here, and this will have an accessible washroom. So there will be public washrooms in this area with an accessible washroom as well. And then this is going into the basement. So the basement has we were not able to fully dig down the basement floor. So the basement, the majority of it will be used for storage, but there will be one portion there underneath the addition that's going on, which will be paramedic services. And this is the CRCA space that we're walking into now. So this will be a meeting room. This was the old staff kitchen, which will now be a meeting room. And then there will be 2 other meeting rooms on the other side, which is where the old paramedic kitchen was. And then this is the CRCA space. So as you can see, the majority of this space is finished. It's just the millwork that needs to go in and the glass frosting on the glass walls. And that's just storage. And the washrooms down there are accessible washrooms as well. But these are quite open spaces. So the CRCA opted to have more open spaces. So although it looks quite a bit larger, you will have the same number of desks in there as well. It's just open as opposed to having walls around the desks. And then the piece that's missing here as well is that, as you can see, those offices are glassed in as opposed to walled in. So there is frosting going on to those glass works.
And that's it. I didn't miss any big chunks, did I?
And so that's just the video of the building and the construction currently. And then do just have a couple of floor plans that I wanted to show you. And again, it'll just point out some of the accessibility features of the new building. So as we mentioned, so this is the main floor and it looks very busy, but that's because all of these are construction drawings. So the walls are in there and everything, but I'm not able to, can I plug this? So if I can just point out here, so this is the front area where I said there was a large addition that was put on. There are going to be 2 washrooms in here, and one of them will be a universal washroom that's fully accessible. And then this is the new council chamber, which is yet to be, it's under construction now. If you were to drive by there, you would see the construction going on. And I do have another image or drawing of just the council chamber so that you can see that a little bit better. But again, here is where the reception will be. This wall here will be glass so that people can come up to the reception area. There will be both be a height-wise counter as well as a reduced counter for those who might be entering using a mobility aid. And then the accessible washrooms are here. And then this is a stairwell here that goes downstairs to either the paramedic services or the CRCA, but as well, the elevator is right here that will take anybody who needs to go downstairs or upstairs any further. And again, this is the flex space that you had seen in through the video, which again was the walls weren't completely finished, but it's a collaboration space. So this is where the lunchroom will be. There'll be a kitchen set up here with countertops and microwaves and refrigerators. And then this will be seating for when staff have lunch. This was the CAO's office, and this in here was the executive assistant's office. Again, difficult to see with all the amount of information that is in these drawings. So again, the drawings do look very busy and very cluttered, but just because the information that's in these, once it's finished, it will look much better. But this is the HR office. So we have 3 HR offices here, as well as 1 reception area here. And then this will be the new staircase. And behind the staircase here is our occupational health nurse's office. And then up here will be the clerk's office and the manager of IT. So that's just basically a look at the main floor. But there is accessible access all the way back here to what will be the future council chamber for council. And then can you just pop the next one up? So this is the actual council chamber. So the public has the ability to come in here. There is an access door here. There's also an access door here. So the public can come in here. There is a standard washroom, and then there's a universal washroom. So the area is fully accessible. This is how the public will enter the council chamber. This space is being left open for accessible seating. So this will be public seating area here with an area left open that could accommodate 4 or 5 accessible seating if required. The CRCA has a board of 20 and the county has a board of 8. So we had to make sure that everybody was accommodated. So when the county meets, this will be just the boardroom here. There is sufficient room here to ensure that if we have the need for accessible seating for members of council, these 2 spaces here provide sufficient space for the members of council to enter through this door. Council will enter through this door. And then this is 2 accessible seating areas, and then it's fully accessible for the head or the chair to seat here as well. So this would be where the chair or the warden would sit during a meeting, and then you have the clerk and the CAO on either side. And this space back here is the desk for IT and technology, which you're currently seeing Steve up here beside me right now. So we have ensured that it does meet accessibility requirements. The room shifted just a little bit this way so that we did have sufficient room here to allow for those who require mobility aids at the meeting. So are there any questions on any of those plans? It's really exciting. Staff's really looking forward to getting back into the building, but are there any questions on the plans at all? I know, Erin, this is the first that you're seeing this.
In the washroom at the top, is that rectangle like a change option for people?
I believe it is, yes.
I just
I was just wondering when the date is for completion of all the construction.
So we have been advised. Sorry, we have been advised by Emmons and Mitchell that we should be able to, the space should be completed by December of this year. So if all goes well, we're hoping to start a gradual phased in move back into the building so that staff are back in there by the end of January. And one of the other things that's not showing here, could you just pull up the previous drawing? So I guess it's showing here, but this where the new council chamber is. This is the addition that's now under construction, and it's the paramedic services that will be underneath it. So what happened was there was to be a very large addition out front here, which was to be the collaboration space, and this was to be the paramedic training space. But due to construction issues, they couldn't find any bedrock here. They dug almost to China and found no bedrock. So the decision was made to not move forward with this addition. So council, when this was brought back to council, council did support that when this addition was made, that the roof and the construction be beefed up a little bit so that it could support a 3rd floor. So you're not seeing the construction plans, but on the 2nd floor, you would only see this. This would be the 2nd floor when you go up to the planning and economic development and finance area, where planning and economic development would have been housed here and finance would have been housed over here. There was no addition, but council has supported that this structure be reinforced strong enough to withhold a 3rd floor. so that in the future, a third floor could be built if we do find that we need that additional space. I believe the intent at present is that paramedic services will find a location that they can rent out for their training facilities until that time. But this space here the construction has been beefed up a little bit to support a third floor in the future.
So Janet, if I could, the plan looks very well thought out. Is there an opportunity for the accessibility committee to do a tour before the final sort of, I guess the final?
I can certainly check with that. Because it is a construction zone, I think those who have mobility issues would have a difficult time getting through the building. Hard hats and steel-toed boots at this point are still required, but for sure, once completion is more that it's before move-in, we could probably arrange for the committee to come through at that time. But I'm thinking right now as a safety issue, it would not be safe for all members to go through the building, or perhaps it's not even accessible at this point for everyone to go through. But certainly before we do move in, for those who may want to attend, could certainly come. And I think we're going to get counsel through there as well before, just before. Councillor Gowdy or Janet, do you have any questions on the drawings?
I have a question, Jeanette, and it ties to the video. There was one stairwell that was enclosed with just a single handrail. I'm thinking on this drawing, it might be the one in the upper middle section of the drawing. I wondered if plans included adding an additional handrail to that. It is a narrow staircase, but in the event of emergency evacuation, I think a second handrail would be very fortuitous.
Oh, thank you. I will certainly take that back to the consultants, or sorry, to the construction team.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before we close up this report? Okay, so thank you for your patience on that. And I believe Richard's report's next.
All right, thanks. That's was very informative. There's lots of stuff going on over there. Just moving along, under point 7 still, the Frontenac KMP Trail. Richard is here today. Did you want to speak to what's happening there, or what? I guess you're looking for some information or some feedback in regards to the accessibility or use of the trail.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the north of Verona, the KMP Trail has always had been a multi-use trail, which has included motorized vehicles, where south of Verona, it has been reserved for what's considered to be more active uses, non-motorized uses, essentially. We've had a partnership for the last 2 years with the Verona District ATV Club, who have assisted with minor maintenance and capital improvements on the trail north of Verona. Their club's very active on the trail, and they brought a request forward to County Council in April of this year to extend the motorized access for the ATV Club south of Verona to Harrowsmith. So it's another 9 kilometers of the KMP Trail for motorized use. Council directed us to look into the feasibility of it, which we then did a public survey and public engagement. We had over 867 respondents to the public survey, which came in at about 50% in favor, 50.4 to be exact, of extending that use, and then obviously the other half not being in favor or not being sure about whether or not it's a good idea. So we brought that to the committee, the Planning and Economic Development Committee, early last month. And there was a public meeting at that time where a number of community members spoke. Most of them spoke against extending the access to the trail. And the committee, in its deliberations, requested some additional information from staff about whether or not this was a good idea, essentially, and that information that they requested from us has to do with safety. Are there other multi-use trails that do this, and are there recorded incidents of injury or death? Is there liability issues that we have to be aware of if we extend this use? They want to understand how our bylaws are enforced more clearly, understand the trail use data more clearly, and get comparable information from other jurisdictions in terms of this information. And so we thought that since we had some opportunity to collect that information, that would be a good time to receive input from the Accessibility Committee in terms of the whether or not accessibility is impacted by having motorized uses on the KMP trail. And we included some facts in our report here just to provide context if you're not familiar with the KMP trail, which I know the chair is very familiar with the KMP trail, but it's approximately 3 meters in width at any location. We have motorized uses include ATVs and side-by-sides. So ATVs are typically 1 to 1.5 meters wide, and side-by-sides are a little bit over. They can get up to being over 2 meters now, which is a new trend. And then under the AODA, where we have gates restricting access to the trail, we have to make sure that we have at least 1 meter of width to allow access, which in some places is considered actually quite narrow. And then we also in areas where there's a lot of pedestrianized use of the trail, or we're close to sensitive receptors like a village, we reduce the speed limits to 20 kilometers an hour. And so we provided links to the comments that came with the survey responses. There was 50 some pages of comments associated with those survey responses. And we saw arguments for both people who, considered motorized uses as a challenge for people who have mobility issues. And some people found motorized uses as enabling recreational experiences for them for people with mobility issues. And so there was a debate even amongst from an accessible frame in terms of that. And so we're continuing to do our research to bring the information back to the Planning and Economic Development Committee later this year. But I'd be happy to either investigate additional considerations brought up by this committee, or take these any comments from this committee to that committee as part of their deliberations.
Great, thank you. How long is how much? What's the length of the trail that we're talking about roughly?
So currently, we manage 70 kilometers of KMP trail, and 55 kilometers of that is motorized. So, they would be talking about adding an additional 9 kilometers or so of motorized use.
And does that include snowmobiles, or is that just ATVs?
Good question. So snowmobiles actually have access, motorized use, to the entire trail in the winter months. And that's because there are a lot less conflicts with other trail users throughout the year. So the snowmobile network has access to the entire KMP trail as well as the entire Cataraqui trail.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions in regards to or any questions for Richard?
I have a couple of concerns I'd like to raise, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, first, I'm concerned throughout the public meeting and even in your comments now, positioning this as motorized versus non-motorized. Please remember that many people within the disabled community have motorized vehicles. And it could be an electric wheelchair, it could be an electric scooter, but we have to be very careful when we're using a broad term like that, that we're not accidentally excluding a group that I believe we don't want to exclude. I have considerable concerns about the insurance at the individual level. And I don't have a sense from anything I heard in the public meetings that we're doing much in the way of bylaw enforcement, like having blitz days where everybody on the trail in a vehicle in the portions that already allow ATVs is checked to make sure they are following all of the regulations. The major concern I have about this is the side-by-side or UTVs. When we look at the size of them, I spent a fair bit of time looking at sites like Bombardier because I knew nothing about this. There are a lot of vehicles now being manufactured that are bigger than my Kia Soul. And I certainly wouldn't want to be on a trail and have my Kia Soul, let alone something smaller like a smart car, trying to share that trail with me. And that is what happens if you allow the larger vehicles on this trail next to people who are walking, possibly with canes or walkers, or pushing strollers. I think it would make a residential section of the trail very dangerous.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if there was any questions in those comments. I did take notes of those comments from the committee member. Just in response to the our ATVs checked on the motorized sections, about 3 or 4 times a year, the OPP SAVE team, they're the snowmobile ATV vehicle enforcement unit are out, and they do check for permits, license, insurance, and whether people are wearing their safety gear appropriately on the trail. They cover Eastern Ontario, so they rotate through different trails and facilities over the course of the year. But we do have, the county does not organize anything from that perspective. However, we do work with the OPP on these days.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a question myself then. As you were saying, some of the vehicles that are on there are a bit larger, the side-by-sides. If they are, say there's, and maybe this could be, you might have some experience from this, from some of the areas that do have some heavier traffic on it with these vehicles, but if they're meeting each other on the trail, if these bigger vehicles are using the trail in other areas, has there been any concern for like wear on the edges of trail of the trails on either sides? Because if you've got vehicles that are passing each other all the time, what's sort of happening to the edges? Is there increased concern then that somebody going through with a a scooter or a power chair or something like that would have to be more concerned or more cautious about getting closer to the edge, because it might be eroded from some of the vehicles that are going back and forth on the trail that are larger than a wheelchair or scooter?
Thank you. Good question. Certainly not one that has been discussed or considered yet. We're not seeing significant wear on the edges in any way that would be different than what we are in at this point, and that might be just because while there are motorized vehicles out there, there are not an enormous amount of them, and so they do encounter each other and they do slow down to pass each other. We have been over the last couple of years implementing a program of edge protection, especially along areas where there are steep drop-offs, which is most of the trail. So we prioritize areas that get more pedestrian traffic or have steeper drop-offs. But the edge protection are small fences that we've brought into this committee for comment before, and they help keep folks onto the understanding that the edge of the trail is coming near and they don't slip off the side. And but the motorized vehicles came up to us with concerns that there wasn't enough room for passing in areas where we have edge protection on both sides of the trail. And we simply we've done our best to accommodate as much as possible, but we treat it as a bridge and a safety concern, and that, you know, somebody's going to have to back up and until and that we encourage communication. So and then finally, the other piece is we have a regular program of grading our trail edges. So we see more of an issue of encroaching vegetation on our edges than we see issues with our edges being worn away. And so the grading reconstitutes the width of the trail. It takes the ruts out of the trail created by the heavier motorized vehicles, and makes it keeps it level for all uses. And so we try to grade each section of trail once every 2 to 3 years. So
Yeah, that was going to be my other question, actually, just in regards to just general wear with tracks and tire marks and stuff. So they regrade that every 2 to 3 years, you were saying?
in sections with motorized use, we regrade every 2 to 3 years. We don't have to grade as much in sections without motorized use because we're mostly pulling back vegetation in the non-motorized sections from the edges, where in the motorized sections we're mostly reconstituting the level crown so that it's flat for use. And the ruts usually lead to erosion and pooling of water that lead to other maintenance concerns, not just accessibility concerns.
Okay. All right, thank you. Were there any other questions for Richard? By anyone? All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Richard. I'm sure if people have further questions, they can get a hold of you as well still. But thanks for sharing that, and we'll see where that goes then.
If any committee members have comments, feel free to reach out directly,
Okay.
and we can include them or consider them as part of our reports going forward to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Thank you.
Richard, could you just maybe advise when that next committee meeting is? It's August the...
So we're planning to bring this information to that committee in October. So the scheduled meeting for that is October 4th. We do have a committee meeting on August the 16th, but that agenda has more budget considerations and work plan considerations going to the committee. In this issue, I still have to finish my research before I can bring it around.
Okay, thank you very much, then, Richard. The next point is township updates. I think we just have one right now for North Frontenac. Who was going to speak to that one?
that would be Mr. Cohorn, if there are any questions.
Okay. Were you going to make the update that day, or you were just looking for any feedback? Oh, it was attached to the agenda. Okay. So were there any questions then in regards to that update by anybody? I think so. All right. We'll move on to point 9 then, communications. Kurt Holliday, he submitted a couple of pieces of communication that were sent out to members. The video I watched, I thought it was interesting. It was a bit lengthy, but it was certainly an interesting video to watch for anyone who's looking to understand the process of being involved with the advisory committee. Did anybody have any questions about that for Kurt? Kurt's not with us today, unfortunately, but were there any questions regarding either of those two pieces of communication from anybody? Okay. There's no other business, I don't believe. I guess the next point is just our next meeting. Do we have a date, a potential date for that?
So with your permission, if I could maybe get back to the committee on the next date, because they will need to receive the applications for the 2023 Access Award. We will start to advertise that very shortly. And typically it is presented at the warden's reception. So I'm still working with the executive assistant to the CAO who looks after the warden's wine and cheese reception. So I'm just not sure when the date is yet. Sometimes it's in October, sometimes it's in November. So as soon as I get a clear date from when that will be, typically we close nominations by the end of October, but if the warden's reception is in October, we'll have to close it a little bit sooner. So I will get back to the committee as soon as I hear on when that date will be. And then we can just have a meeting quickly before that to look over the nominations and any other information that might need to come to the committee.
Okay, so you'll get back to us on a date then for that? That's what I heard then? All right. So I guess we're just going to adjourn for now then. Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I can motion that.
Right, and can I get a second?
I can second that.
Okay, Bill, all right, and all in favor? All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, and that concludes this meeting.